You've got a case study here that you want to talk to about an investment property that received a renovation. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, I can talk to that, absolutely. And this is like we're thinking about the strategic renovation, I guess the return on spending some money on that. Obviously, we'll draw the depreciation difference out of that, but the case study, if it works like this, it's just to think about as renovators, right?
Very healthy.
And we've taken something here, let's say that it was bought for about $720,000 and, you know, in a bit of an old state, rents for $600 a week. $31,200 per year is therefore the cash flow from this property that you collect in rent. Then we look at that and someone puts a kitchen, a bathroom and a bit of a makeover, some solar panels. They get depreciation, save some power bills as well. Spend $95,000. Now we've ended up with a situation now with $720,000 as a purchase price. $95,000 has been spent on renovation. Then a valuation at the end of that comes up with a valuation of $980,000 because they were strategic and did the right things, hopefully.
Yeah.
So we've made some value uplift. But the other thing is that the rent here, once looking at the property manager's new expected rental, moved from $600 a week to $890 per week. Because I've done renovations and got those sort of differences because they can make a pretty big difference with sometimes some internal renovations that make, you know, a new kitchen and bathroom goes a long way for rental sometimes. And what that means is now our overall incomes come up to $46,280 per year, meaning a difference of about $15,000 in rental income from the year on that $95,000 spend. Now, when I look at a renovation, I go, would I spend the money on that renovation? And do I think I'm going to get a capital uplift first by doing that?
Yeah.
Because I might make 2 bedrooms to 3 or do a new kitchen, bathroom, whatever it actually is. Do I think I can get a capital uplift? Because that's the first, I guess, decision. Well, unless the kitchen's falling apart, doesn't work, you've got to think of a few things.
And a basic rule of thumb on that is 2 for 1. So for every dollar that I put in, I want to get $2 back. This has got a better result. So let's say round it up, we put 100,000 in, and we've got basically effectively 160 back. Yes. On top of that 100 that we put in there, right?
Which is a great valuation uplift.
Very healthy uplift. Yep.
I don't think you can always get that good.
No, I think, again, good rule of thumb.
It's got to be strategic.
1 to 2.
Yeah, that's definitely strategic. Extra bedroom, that helped. Yeah.
But the other part of that is I go, well, with my $95,000 spend, with my $290 additional rental, I'm actually getting like a 16% return on my $95,000 in additional cash flow. Correct. So I go, well, if that's increasing my overall yield or cash flow return on my property by making that expenditure, and helps me go, well, yes, I like that renovation because I do get capital uplift and I do also get a good return on the additional money that I've spent on that renovation.
But that's value and that's yield, but obviously there's a depreciation impact.
Yeah, we then draw that back also to look at, well, it does make a depreciation difference. Now, I don't renovate for depreciation. I don't buy for depreciation.
Correct. That would be a little bit silly.
Because it's
cart before the horse.
When you renovate, you do have to actually spend the money. It doesn't just come out of part of the purchase. By spending $95,000 on this particular property, the depreciation that was there of $3,985 has now in the next year come up to be a total of $9,993. So on top of my increased yield of 16% on my additional spend, I've also increased my cash flow substantially. I've also increased my depreciation significantly, and we end up with a significant difference in the overall cost of owning this property. It started with, prior to the renovation, being something that was, you know, $247 a week of cost to keep a hold of this property with all the rest of those numbers actually considered. And after doing that renovation and increasing my loan by the $95,000 and therefore having a higher cost to own that property, I mean, I was getting 16% of it. I'm probably paying 6% in additional interest. I just have to be able to borrow that.
Yep.
The cash flow comes down to negative of $73 a week, or after I do this, I've got $174 a week difference in the cost of owning this property after I've done that renovation, got my additional depreciation deductions, and that additional rent and yield. So makes a pretty significant difference if I go crunch those numbers from the start.
Ben, if we zoom out, there's actually it's actually a thesis. It amplifies our underlying thesis around why you would buy established property, because you bought something for $720, and or you could go to market and buy another property next door that's the same as this for $980. But if by doing what you've done, you've locked in the land in the better locations,
Correct.
You've increased the value. You've increased the yield on the property. You've clearly improved cash flow through the depreciation scenario here, but it's also forgotten around stamp duty savings, because if you bought at $720 versus now coming to market and buying that property after all the work's done, you're buying stamp duty at $980. There's a saving there as well. So it's something that people really need to think about, and it's the, I guess, the underlying mantra we've had from day one on this podcast is don't buy for depreciation, create it. Because in this case here, you've got all the other three fundamentals right: stamp duty savings, increase the value, increase the yield, and you've still been able to create depreciation benefits whilst not being seduced by the shiny taps and the brand new. I know Brad's got a part of his business where he does service the brand new, but just the message for you and me on this podcast, it just underlies the importance of creating depreciation. Don't buy it.
Correct. And if I can put some sugar, some icing on your cake that you just said there, if I'm buying with the right land to asset ratio, which means that effectively I'm still buying that quite older property, and I've been able to execute on this, my capital growth story is also going to be superior, because effectively I've bought most in land as opposed to improvements. So that combination is a winning combination every day of the week.
Yeah, I've been a keen property investor for 20 years. I had no money to start. I didn't have it. In order to do the next one, I had no choice. I had nothing to borrow against. I needed to grow,
create the equity,
manufacture some equity so I
And
could
cash
actually
flow.
do the next one, and cash flow as well.
So it's a ripper strategy, and when we do our property planning, we do work on rules of thumb around $1 down for a $2 return, and we're quite conservative, a little bit more conservative on the yield pickup, but that's, remember, because we're doing models, right? We're not actually, but when you get into the weeds, you can actually find these opportunities, right? And you can say, oh, that is a 2-bedroom house that quite easily could be made into a 3-bedroom house with moving this non-structural wall and doing a couple of other things. Well, we can't model that because we don't know where you're going to buy at the time. But when we're doing these models, we basically work on a good rule of thumb, which is $1 down for $2 back in value. We'll then adjust the rental yield appropriately based on that new price, but we won't inflate the overall yield that you're going to get. And off the back of that, it still makes for, a good strategy from a cash flow. We'll then, once the depreciation's done, we'll bleed that depreciation back into the cash flow models. Happy days, in terms of, oh, wow, I didn't expect that level of upside. So we're quite conservative in our modelling, but when we start to put the actuals against the targeted, makes for a lot of good outcomes.
I look, there's a case study there, and I'm always a conservative estimator on what I think I'm going to get, and as long as does it stack on the pessimistic scenario is always the question I'm asking myself.
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't get 16% on yield on that additional bit of rent, and I got 10. Would I still do it? That's the questions to ask yourself, right? 10,
yeah.
10, yeah. The answer is yes.
And of course you would.
And if I do get 16, great.
Correct.
But having some sort of idea and speaking to the property managers on, well, if I do this and this, what do you think the rent would look like?
That's your DD. Do your due diligence.
Yeah, is how I normally do those.
Yep, beautiful.
All right, let's stay in the renovating lane. Something else that investors need to know, particularly active investors, is what scrapping is and what that means as an investor, and how they need to know some nuance around that to maximise the deductions. Can you talk to that?
So we've just talked renovations, and in that scenario, I didn't do any scrapping allowance or an allowance for what would be scrapped. Scrapping is would actually make some of that scenario potentially a little better in the year when you do the scrapping. It does make it a very complex case study if you're trying to put scrapping there as well. We've done them if you want to read them, but anyway. When we renovate, we throw things away, right? We throw stuff away that was still there. If you throw something away that still had some tax value left, if you want to call it that, then rather than continuing to depreciate it over the time until it runs out of its value, now you've thrown it away or discarded it, you have the opportunity to claim whatever value was left when you throw it away, all at once. I think sometimes the easy way to explain it is a simple example. It's not unusual now to start renovating a house with a 30-year-old kitchen. 30-year-old kitchen's pretty old. It's still seen as a kitchen, as part of the structure, the Division 43, that you claim over 40 years.
And it's still past 87. 30 years ago, it's still post 87.
So a property with a 30-year-old kitchen, it's quite possible that it's getting tired and you think about renovating that as an investor. It's still got 10 years or 1/4 of its life left from a tax perspective. So 1/4 of its value is still not depreciated or claimed in the Division 43 allowance. So 1/4 of what the cost of that kitchen was is potentially an instant deduction the year you rip it out.
And if I've got a schedule in place, so I don't need a scrapping schedule, because I can just literally write off the remaining useful life of the depreciable assets that I've got
Yes.
on my tax return. Yep. But if I don't have that, and I'm about to do a significant structural renovations with potentially a lot of this scrapping opportunity, what's the difference between that type of schedule that we might get done through BMT versus the traditional?
It's still a depreciation schedule.
Same thing.
Now, the difference is if you're going to rip it apart, so the important thing to take out of that is if you're about to rip it apart, call the Queensland first.
Tell us. Because if it's in the skip bin out the front, you're in trouble, right? It has to be in situ.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you got to prove it was in situ. And the easest way to prove it was in situ is
Leave it in
we've
situ.
got photos in situ when we visited it. And it's another time when a site inspection is quite important, because you can't go retrospect and go see it if it's been thrown away in the skip bin. But the importance of making sure that we look at it first, and the schedule's not any different. If we know that you're going to scrap it, we'd probably like a bit more detail around the cost of some of the things you're going to scrap, that we can do that. And we can do that retrospectively because we've got a photo of the kitchen. Your depreciation schedule doesn't actually split out your kitchen cost normally.
Okay.
So we need to do a bit of work to help you with that.
So it's a little bit of a sweetener for the outgoing or costs you're about to spend on the reno.
Well, let's land the plane. If you're about to if you bought a place and you're about to do demo day that you see on all of the renovation shows,
the fun
part, you
At the start.
you will want to actually have the depreciation schedule done before demo day.
Yes.
And if you don't, you've effectively in that scenario, what is sitting in the skip bin is effectively in that scenario 25% of its overall value, which is a non-cash deduction that you could have claimed, and we go back and do the numbers we did earlier in the episode, that you're just leaving money on the table, leaving that money with the ATO, and let's be honest, they don't need any more of your money than they should have.
You also paid to get rid of it.
Yeah.
That's right. That just paid for the skip bin.